clearly somebody's in a better mood than usual. I mean, I'm feeling just as great about it. But, I mean, I don't really think I need to ask how you feel.
All the way, all the way, Stanley Cup, Stanley Cup.
I'm not even going to bother switching into the hoodie because I am feeling super optimistic about this. Vegas Golden Knights win the home opener, the start of the Golden Age, against the Chicago Blackhawks by a final score of, and I can't believe I'm saying this, 1-0. Now, I've been watching Golden Knights games for as long as they've been around, and I cannot remember the last time the Golden Knights won a 1-0 game at home, let alone in the spotlight of being the home opener of a new season. But hey, who's to complain? The Golden Knights brought up a pretty similar lineup to the lineup they brought when they played the Los Angeles Kings to kick off the season. Only difference being Paul Cotter slides up onto the third line with Jonathan Marchessault and William Karlsson replacing the likes of a scratched Michael Amadio. And William Carrier reslots into the lineup on his usual spot on the fourth line with Nick Waugh and Keegan Colasar. And on the back end, Ben Hutton is replaced by newly signed, newly minted Nick Hague. Now, I've got to take a moment to acknowledge the really cool pregame that the Golden Knights do. Not only like the in-arena stuff, bringing them out surrounding the newly armored Golden Knight on the center ice dot, but also the pregame stuff, like the gold carpet. That is just one of the cooler things, especially around the NHL where players like to stay away from fans. Putting the players right in the middle of Toshiba Plaza, having them walk through a sea of happy Golden Knights fans was simply the best image to get the regular season started for the city of Vegas. And get the regular season started in net, we've got Logan Thompson versus Chicago Blackhawks goalie Alex Stalock getting his first start of the season. He barely played it all last year, and he barely played the season before that, so clearly the goaltending matchup also favors the Golden Knights tonight. That being said, there isn't really a lot to talk about in this game, especially with the score of 1-0. But we're going to break it down in its big forms. The Golden Knights looked kind of bad, to be frank, when the game started. Really shaky start. We were having issues clearing the defensive zone, entering the offensive zone. It was a lot of chip and chase, neutral zone hockey, the kind of play that the Golden Knights are not particularly known for being really good at. So obviously the over-worried fan in me was starting to be slightly concerned as to what the first period would look like. Logan Thompson made a huge, really important save on a breakaway from Andreas Athanasiou about 5 minutes into the game. And this really showed us that Logan Thompson was going to be a pretty important player tonight, especially this was just an early taste of what he had to show for the remainder of the game. The Golden Knights got their first real good scoring opportunity about 7 minutes into the game on a partial 2-on-1 featuring the likes of Nick Waugh and Keegan Colasar. Now, I love both those players. Nick Waugh is going to be a really good player, middle six, potentially top six player in the Golden Knights' near future. And Keegan Colasar has so much potential. That being said, with Keegan Colasar being one of my favorite players, I have a little bit of room to kind of poke and prod him for his lack of production, because it's just one of those things where when you score, you score. And if you don't know how to score, you don't really know how to score. Keegan Colasar is basically a 7-Eleven. He is always open, but because of that, he's never able to close. That being said, he always finds a soft spot on the ice. He always finds a way to get a high-value scoring opportunity, but he seldom puts the puck in the net. So the fact that he was there is a good thing. But on the other hand, we value goals here on this channel. And so that's why I'm going to give him a little bit of grief for missing what seemed to be a somewhat wide open net on Alex Stalock about 7 minutes into the game. And really, that kind of became one of the only great opportunities for the Knights. They still hadn't really landed much shots in a while. A good spring pass from Pietrangelo to Smith gives Vegas their first shot in a long while, about 9 minutes into the game. And what would soon become a trend happened on a partial 2-on-1 late with about 4 minutes to go in the first period. Paul Cotter comes in on a 2-on-1, and I'm not sure who he was trying to feed it to. I think he was trying to feed it to William Karlsson on his right wing. But he had Stalock leaning past, so he had room to shoot, and he chose to try and pass it through what I can only assume is a sea of white jerseys and try and feed the puck to a very low percentage play. So he picked pass when he should have picked shot. That being said, the stat line wasn't clean, as Brett Howden took an interference penalty with 18:58. It was a really stupid penalty. It was kind of the epitome of the Golden Knights' first period. They were there, but they weren't there. Like, we had numbers coming up. It was a penalty taken at the offensive blue line. It was interference that was totally unnecessary. But that being said, you got whistled for it. It wasn't really necessary. The Hawks had two really, really good chances. One of them requiring what I can only assume to be an 11 Bell save by Logan Thompson, because 10 Bell does not even remotely come close to describing how important that save was. Going from his left to his right, catching a one-timer off the palm of his glove that was totally earmarked for the back of the net. The Golden Knights did get the last say on the period. They had the last real opportunity with Stone and Stevenson breaking in on a 2-on-1. But similar to Cotter earlier before them, they chose pass instead of shoot, and so the shot went by the wayside with really nothing to show for it. The stats for the first period are kind of the same way. We were being outshot 10-9. We were 60% from the faceoff dot, but getting out hit 20-10 with 4 giveaways. So that shows that the play is a little bit sloppy and lacking ferocity from the Golden Knights side of the ice. We were struggling in transition, couldn't break out, couldn't break in. And so we spent a lot of the period on our heels. And thank goodness that Logan Thompson showed up and may have had his Wheaties this morning, because he played exceptionally well. He is the only reason this game is still knotted up at 0. We begin the second period with the back half of the Brett Howden penalty that we took in the first period. The penalty was killed pretty effectively, ended with another 2-on-1 featuring, you guessed it, Mark Stone and Chandler Stevenson. And you guessed it again, they passed it instead of shot it. So that is 2-on-1s for that duo that went by the wayside and didn't manage anything. And from that point on, the period kind of hit another bit of a lull where we were kind of stuck in the neutral zone, stuck in transition, playing on our heels, trying to make sure that Chicago didn't really land any quality shots. And while they didn't land a lot of quality shots, they were still landing a couple of them. And the stat sheet again remained pretty clean until Paul Cotter took a hooking penalty at 6:29. This power play, or this penalty kill for the Knights, was pretty similar to the way that they have all gone to this point. Good goaltending and good defense, and for the third time in the period, on the back end of the penalty kill, Chandler Stevenson and Mark Stone go in on a 2-on-1, and they decide to pass the puck again instead of shoot right as the penalty is expiring. Fortunately, we have some different personnel for our next 2-on-1, as Zach Whitecloud intercepts a centering pass deep in the defensive zone and feeds the puck up to Paul Cotter, who goes in with Jonathan Marchessault on his right, or on his left wing. And after having learned his lesson, I assume, by watching film or getting reamed by one of the assistant coaches, he decides to realize, wait a second, I could be an elite goal scorer, and I'm still trying to guarantee my spot on this roster. I may as well try and take a shot. And take a shot he did, as from just below the top of the circle, he fires it off the left post behind Alex Stalock and in for the game's opening goal. Now, this was just one of those moments where everybody was very excited. I'm sure the Fortress was rocking, but I'm sitting there thinking he finally picked shot. Maybe the rest of the team can take this memo, because it was a great pass. He looked the whole way. It was actually Riley Smith who was on his wing. And he looked him off the whole way and decided, you know what, I'm going to take the shot. And he took the initiative, and boom, that was it. Stat line reading: Cotter, his first of the season, from Whitecloud at 8:44 of the second period. So immediately, pretty much after the goal, the game slowed down a bit. Again, like this game is really, it is very momentary hockey against the Chicago Blackhawks. Something would happen, and then nothing would happen for a while. And then something would happen, and then nothing would happen for a while. And this was one of those moments. The Chicago Blackhawks had a bunch of turnovers that led to 3 really good chances in the span of about 45 seconds. This was about 7 minutes to go in the period. And then there was a whole lot of nothing. And then Chandler Stevenson comes flying down the wing with about 4 minutes to go in the period, fires it at Stalock, and it goes kind of between his arm, but it just dribbles towards the goal line and ultimately winds up fading to the outside of the net. Another great scoring opportunity, but nothing to show for it. Obviously, the Golden Knights were upping the pressure as the Blackhawks were kind of starting to fall behind, and Lafferty took a bit of a dumb penalty. He was driving the net, and either he lost an edge or was helped into it, but he wound up taking a goalie interference penalty on Logan Thompson. That being said, this was probably a makeup call for Thompson getting run over in the first period on a partial breakaway. So it was a little bit soft, but we'll take it. The first period of the first minute of the penalty kill, or the power play rather, wasn't very good. Couldn't really sustain any zone time. On the second wave of the power play, there was a really good jam play set up by Phil Kessel, who missed a good chunk of the second period for injury, but I'm not entirely sure why. There's a myriad of reasons why he could have missed about 8 minutes of game time. That being said, he came back and he looked fine, so I doubt it's anything too serious. He found a way to get the puck down to Nick Waugh in the low slot, who just tried to jam play. The puck was sitting on edge on the goal line, so it was about an inch and a half away from putting the Golden Knights up 2-0. But alas, it was an inch and a half closer on the goal line. Game stays at 1-0. The power play was a little bit unorganized as a whole, so it was kind of ineffective, minus the good chance from Kessel and Waugh. The one thing to take away as the horn sounded on the end of the second period, letting the Golden Knights go to the intermission with a 1-0 lead, is that the Knights outshot the Hawks 10-0 over the last 8 minutes of the period, outshooting them 25-18 overall and 16-8 in the period. We're now getting out hit 33-14 at this point, but we're maintaining a good lead at the faceoff dot, winning about 55% of the faceoffs. Cotter finally figured out how to shoot the puck, which is awesome. That's a really good thing to see. Hopefully he puts up a couple more goals. He's been playing really, really well. So I'm glad that he was able to reward himself by potting a goal in the home opener at the start of the Golden Age. Logan Thompson, still playing exceptionally solid. He's a great goalie. He's looking really good this game, and he's making everybody in Vegas know that that's exactly what's going on, and that he is trying to give himself a leg up in the goaltending competition. So the two players who earned themselves a job out of camp in the form of Paul Cotter and Logan Thompson both looked really good in the first and second periods particularly. Defending a 1-0 lead going into the third period is not always the easiest thing in the world to do. But it's something that the Golden Knights are historically pretty good at and only kind of struggled with towards the back end of last season. So hopefully old habits don't die hard. And it was pretty clear that the Knights came out with a little bit of ferocity, as it didn't take long for something to happen on the score sheet, as Jonathan Toews took a hooking penalty at 1:10 of the third period. The first wave of the power play had a couple of really good chances, some clean zone entries, but little to no danger on those clean zone entries, so the zone time wasn't really sustained. It was just a lot of in-shot clear, in-shot clear. The second wave was much less effective, unfortunately. That second power play unit that looked so good in LA didn't quite look great tonight at home, with the power play ending with only one total shot on goal. Fortunately, it didn't take too long to get another opportunity, and by that I mean it took 11 minutes of basically nothingness for anything else to happen on the score sheet, with Caleb Jones taking a holding penalty at 12:02. Cotter single-handedly drew this penalty. It was just probably Paul Cotter's power forward magnum opus. He's just holding onto the puck deep in the offensive zone. There are 5 Blackhawks players covering him, and the other 4 Golden Knights are currently engaged in the world's slowest line change, and yet he still manages to draw a penalty and put the Knights to the main advantage. Unfortunately, they weren't really able to do anything with it again, which is really frustrating given that this would have been another great opportunity to put the game out of reach. You know, we're getting late into the game. There's only about 7 minutes left in regulation, and you have the opportunity to essentially deliver the killing blow to a team that just got basically destroyed by the Colorado Avalanche just 24 hours earlier in Colorado. But that being said, the power play was pretty ineffective. There was a good chance right at the tail end of it when Eichel fed Karlsson in the low slot, who kind of found a soft spot in the Hawks' defensive structure, but it wound up hitting Stalock right in the insignia, so it was kind of a nothing chance in the grand scheme of things. There was a good scoring chance by the fourth line on a bunch of net front chaos with about 4 minutes to go in the game, hacking and whacking with about 4 or 5 micro shots recorded, to which I think totaled like 1 shot total. And ultimately, the game just kind of slowed down. That was until the Hawks pulled Alex Stalock with about 1:45 to go. And this is where the madness ensues. Now, we've got a lot of incredibly talented players on this team, and we've got forwards who specialize in possessing the puck and taking the puck off of sticks, and the defensive wonders that is William Karlsson and Riley Smith, or the turnover machine that is Mark Stone. One would consider that we would have a better odds of scoring on an empty net goal than if we didn't score on an empty net goal. And boy, did we not play for average in this situation. So the Golden Knights win a defensive zone faceoff, get the puck up, spend some time killing time in the neutral zone until ultimately feeding the puck to Jack Eichel, who fires it off the side of the net. This led to the Hawks getting it back in the defensive zone, or back in the offensive zone for them, rather. And then ultimately, Alec Martinez forces a turnover and fires it towards the empty net. Oh, that went off of Seth Jones's glove and icing because the refs apparently are partially blind. It very obviously went off of Seth Jones's glove, but that's not really a call you want to make with 40 some odd seconds to go in the game. So ultimately, kind of a debatable icing. The entire Golden Knights bench is up in arms about it, but what's done is done. Ultimately, they lose the ensuing faceoff, but again gain possession, and Riley Smith fires it, hits the outside of the net. And then Stevenson missed the empty net with 20 seconds to go, and then Stone missed the empty net with 6 seconds to go. So that being said, we had like 4 or 5 good opportunities to hit a yawning 4x6 cage and still missed all of them. So maybe we need to work on some empty net in practice or just hitting the net in general. That being said, the game wraps with the final score of 1-0. Paul Cotter and Logan Thompson being the respective heroes of the night. Really, it's all Logan Thompson. It took us 42 games to get a shutout last season, and it took us 2 games to get our first shutout of the year this year. I still remember getting past New Year's and wondering if the combination of Robin Leonard and Laurent Brossoit would be able to actually pitch a shutout, and it took to a road game in Washington where, if we all remember, Robin Leonard's mask got dented by an Alexander Ovechkin slap shot. That was a fun moment, and so getting a shutout this early in the year has got to be a confidence booster for a young netminder in the form of Logan Thompson. Another young player who really made a meal of this game tonight was Paul Cotter. He looked great. Obviously, he scored. He drew that 1-on-5 penalty, and he played a lot of smart hockey, especially on that line with William Karlsson and Jonathan Marchessault. He just fits pretty well. He may become this year's Swiss Army player in the way that Nick Waugh was bouncing up and down the lineup last year. If we can get 2 serviceable power forwards in the lineup at any given moment, that's going to be exceptional, and I'm totally here for it. A couple of sounds from post-game interviews that really stood out to me. A quote from Bruce Cassidy, quote, "We played the way we wanted to. We were able to take a lead. Couldn't extend it, unfortunately. If you want to be a really good team, you extend the leads when you're given the opportunity." I have a feeling he was referring to the power play, but the Knights had some opportunities and they just weren't able to capitalize them. Logan Thompson, who had himself a night, obviously not giving up a goal, said, quote, "It was a lot of fun. Overall, I'm happy with the 2 points." I would be too, Logan. I absolutely would be thrilled with 2 points. So the Golden Knights start the season at 2-0, 1 road win, 1 home win, scoring a total of 5 goals in their first 2 games. There's a lot of positives that can be taken away from this game. And what's happening? No, not pessimism. You thought you could keep me away in a 1-0 win at the home opener. Now, I'm even in pessimistic form, I'm still kind of thrilled with the way the outcome of that game went. That being said, we can't all be sunshine and rainbows about the outcome. 2 points are great. Shutout for Logan Thompson is great. But you can't rely on goalies to not give up a single goal every game. The tandem of Adin Hill and Logan Thompson, while untested, seems pretty good on its face. But the sheer amount of money and talent we have invested in scoring, given that we are exactly on the cap ceiling, we have spent as much as possible. And one would figure that at least 15 of that million would be able to put together a decent power play. I know we got a power play goal in LA, and I know it was a beauty, and I know I said it was one of the best power play goals I've seen the Golden Knights score in a hot minute. That being said, the Chicago Blackhawks are not going to be a good team this year. They're not supposed to be a good team this year. They're not supposed to even be a good defensive team this year. And yet the way that they were able to essentially manhandle our power play with the likes of Jack Eichel, Mark Stone, Chandler Stevenson, Jonathan Marchessault, Phil Kessel, Alex Pietrangelo, Shea Theodore, and the like, the fact that those high-end players weren't able to get through on the man advantage, there was literally one more body wearing a gold jersey than there was wearing a white jersey, and yet they aren't able to get into the zone reliably. Now, I know you can make the claim that, these players haven't been playing together very long. It's hard to build chemistry on the power play in the preseason, but there's enough talent there where the gap needs to be a lot better. Like we're like 1 for 8 to start the year. So that's not particularly great given that we went 0 for 19 to start last season. So really in the first couple of games of the last 2 seasons, we're a combined 1 for 27, which is borderline unacceptable for a team with this much talent and the aspirations that they have. power plays are great. They basically guarantee that you're not going to get scored on for 2 minutes, but you can't have that be a momentum killer because that's kind of what's happening with the Golden Knights right now. It's at best they develop some form of momentum when they don't score, but more often than not, when their power play isn't working, it is not working. So as much as I want to be optimistic, I've also got to be realistic about the state of affairs of the power play. I'm as much of a Knights fan as anybody else, but I also can see what's wrong with the team when it's blatant and obvious, and it's been going on for a couple of seasons. Hopefully this issue will get fixed in the next couple of games, and obviously when we get some practice time, with the next game being on Saturday and the next game after that being on Tuesday, there'll be a couple of days in there where they'll be able to actually iron out some power play work with their full roster. That being said, it's not a good start for the man advantage. The penalty kill has been great. That special teams aspect is great. But you need to be able to put some goals up. And like Bruce Cassidy said, you have to be able to put games out of reach because that's what got the Golden Knights last year all too often is the inability to score that second goal. It almost hurt us in LA, and it was one weird bounce or a misplay away from knotting up this game tonight against the Hawks. Learning opportunity. It's still early in the season, but we've got to see improvement on that power play. That being said, I know this is a little bit more of a depressing end to one of these recaps, but you got to say what you got to say. It's one of those things that's got to be better. I appreciate. Thanks for watching. Hopefully the Golden Knights keep it running because I like making win videos, and I hope we can go a long way into the season without me having to break down a brutal loss because I don't like this gray jersey as much as I like that gold jersey. I like being happy. But if you enjoyed it, be sure to subscribe, like for more, and I will catch you guys in the next one.